the right to...
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and at this rare hour, it's my first opportunity to debate in this new Parliament, and I'm not pleased that I have to debate this particular issue, but I'm happy that this Parliament is taking the effort to look at this issue, because I think it's a very serious issue, and it's a very important issue to many people across the country, and especially in my riding in the Northwest Territories, where Postal Service has been an essential part of our communication system for very far-flung communities over thousands of miles, where the community post office, as my colleague had mentioned in his case in Quebec, these community post offices are very, very important, and they serve a function that in many ways goes beyond simply a business or a service and becomes a part of the culture of the community. And many of us join with our friends at the post office because we don't have door-to-door delivery in the Northwest Territories. We go to our post office and get our mail from our mailboxes, and it's a experience that brings us together. And in many respects, many of our communities absolutely need this service. Mr. Speaker, in some cases, I had the case in Colville Lake last Christmas, where the chief of Colville Lake was working with me to try to get COD service for his community, so that people could affect parcels into the community for gifts for their children, so they could get them online. They could get these things into their communities. Those types of services for northern communities are limited, but they're extremely important. So what happens with the post office to us, it means so much. And so when we look at this move by the government and what it means, and how this government, which is really the boss of the post office, Government of Canada, through its Crown Corporation, runs the post office. We've heard the Prime Minister say in question period he wants to offer a wage settlement to the postal workers, just as in the same way that we offered it to the other public servants. So I think this government knows that their responsibility for the postal service is quite large. And what have they done so in the North in the last number of years in terms of policy with Canada Post? Well, one of the things that they've done, which has turned out to be an abysmal failure, Mr. Speaker, is the revision of the food mail program. The food mail program was an essential public service to Northerners across this vast land, where people needed it to provide them with the basic essentials of life. What we have now is, with the Conservatives having privatized this service to select businesses, is we have a situation where the opportunities for people to take advantage of food mail have been severely curtailed, and the protests go up around the North. So what we see with the Conservatives' program, their policy changes to privatize an essential part of the northern service of our Canada Post has been nothing short of abysmal. We do not have a system that works now, and it's essential that we get this changed, because people are going hungry. People are not getting the proper food. This is not working. So what we've seen is, when we make moves with the post office, with the postal service, with the kinds of things that they provide, sometimes they have very serious results. So when we're talking about dealing with employees, with the relationship between the Postal Corporation and its employees, we're talking about a very serious matter that can affect many of the things that go on in this country. And, Mr. Speaker, I really don't want to see the Postal Service denigrated to any greater extent than it already has been. For the people of the North, for the people of isolated communities that that exist right across this country. And these people, are they simply a drain on the public purse? No. Quite clearly, right across this country, the resources of this country, which are driving the recovery that we see in this country, are coming from right across the isolated regions of this country. So our regions are important to the future of Canada. So we need good services. We need services that work for us. We need services that are fair. They're public services. And what my concern is with the actions of this government early in its term, in its first majority, is to take on this essential public service and try to force it down. Try to take the wind out of its sails. Try to change it into something else, as it did with the food mail, to an incredible result. Mr. Speaker, when I first started in this Parliament, I know the Conservative government led by the Prime Minister had a great friend in John Howard. They brought him here, he spoke in Parliament here. It was clear that the Prime Minister, he liked him a lot. In fact, he liked him so much that he took some of his speeches and gave them in other places. And that was quite entertaining to many of us who could recognize that problem that he had with his great friendship with John Howard. The Howard government took on workers in their country. They were very successful at the start. They were very successful at the start. And this is a word of caution to the Conservative government. The Howard government was very successful, taking little bites at the rights of workers. Then, towards the end of their time, they took too big a bite. Now, Mr. Howard, it was bigger than he could chew. And now I think Mr. Howard is enjoying a forced retirement. And he's out of government. And he's been replaced. So to the Conservative government, who's starting off this majority by taking this rather draconian action against the workers in this country, should take this as a notice. If this is your start on the Howard Road, we'll be after you throughout this Parliament. And when it comes to the next election, if you continue down this road, you'll end up in the same place as John Howard, in the dustbin of politics.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Getting up here after 4 a.m. is always a bit of a surprise, but I listened quite closely to what the Honourable Member had to say, and I know that he represents a very large rural area. I know he visited my riding of Leeds-Grenville last summer and visited the beautiful Thousand Islands, but I can tell you, Mr. Speaker, that I'm receiving lots of calls in my riding. In fact, from a news report from the Kingston Whig Standard just a couple of days ago, the local Cup W union representative said that we want to deliver the mail, especially in a small town like Gananoque, where there are a lot of elderly residents and small businesses that rely on us for their mail. And she also went on to say that she'd hoped that the Labour Minister's motion to put them back to work and the back to work legislation passed. So my question to the Honourable Member is he knows, and he mentioned in his presentation, how important the mail is in rural ridings, if in fact those are important considerations, and if he believes that unions are always correct.
The Honourable Member for Western Arctic.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank my colleague too, because it was a good question. Do I think that unions are always correct? No, I don't. But do I think that the process of collective bargaining, where two bodies have the opportunity to interact, is a good process? Yes, I do. I think that's the process that we use in this country. Now, what has happened in with the rotating work action that was taken by the union, we didn't see much impact from that in the Northwest Territories that upset our service. What we've seen, though, with this lockout is obviously a major disruption, and the emails and the complaints have flowed to me since the lockout. I didn't find that people were concerned so much about the rotating work actions that the unions took, because those were reasonable steps.
Any comments, questions et commentaires? The honourable member for Newmarket-Aurora.
Mr. Speaker, and I did find it very interesting that the member talked about the importance of the mail being delivered to the north. But you know, the one thing I find very interesting as well is that he talks about the union members as if they are the only workers. I'm a business owner, as are many of my friends, and amongst us, we hire bookkeepers and receptionists and groundkeepers and cleaners, all people who are average workers. We depend on the mail. Our businesses depend on the mail. What is this member going to say to these average workers when they can't get paid any longer and they lose their jobs because our businesses are going under?
The honourable member for Western Arctic.
Well, I would say to them, look at this government that would not talk to the Postal Corporation and tell them not to have a lockout. What is wrong with this government? Why were they silent in this regard? That's what I'll say to the people. And when it comes to the importance of Canada Post, yes, I don't think we've had one disagreement here in this Parliament about the importance of Canada Post. But what we have had is a major disagreement about the failure of this government to stand up and say to management, you can't do this rather ridiculous act.
Right. Questions and comments? The honourable member for Churchill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'd like to thank my colleague from the North on his expression of how important Postal Service is to our northern communities and communities that are remote and far away from each other. And I know I've had the chance to work with him on the food mail file. And I'd like to hear from him how he sees both what happened with this government's unilateral act of taking away the food mail contract and giving it to the northern stores, how that, along with other actions that were taken against Canada Post, may be perhaps a part of a more genuine pattern or perhaps a more general direction along with the draconian legislation that we have before us here, a direction that leads only to privatization.
There are less than 30 seconds left for the member for Western Arctic.
Well, I mean, the Standing Committee on Aboriginal Affairs Northern Development did an excellent report on the food mail, and I hope this government looks at it, because really this is not this situation with food mail has to change. We can't simply go on with their policy the way they've outlined it. It's not working. And so if we don't have changes, we've got problems. And I really appeal to this government. Get busy. Change that policy. It's not working.